Assalamualaikum and hi students. So today we will continue on chapter 4 linear programming. So in this lecture 3 of 3, all students should be able first to identify the variables from the problem statement. Then student also should be able to determine the objective function of the problem. Student also should be able to formulate the system of linear inequalities in economics and business problems. And lastly, the student also should be able to compute the optimal value of an objective function using the vertices of a feasible region R. Okay student, as you remember in lecture 2, we already learned about 4.2 part A. So here in this lecture 3, we will learn about 4.2 part B. So it is the continuation from part A. Okay. So let's see part B. Problem interpretation is a process of converting daily problem into a form that can be solved by using mathematical approach method. The basic structure is either to maximize or minimize an objective function while satisfying a set of constraints. So here you need to know our aim is either to maximize or minimize. So it depends on the question. So the steps are as follows. The first step, where we need to identify the variables from the problem statement. So it is either the x or the y. So you need to identify from the problem statement what is x and what is y. Then for the second step, where we need to determine the objective function of the problem. The hint or the clue for the objective function is either maximize or minimize. Okay. So when you see the word maximizing or minimizing, it means that it is the objective function. And then step number 3, where we need to formulate the system of inequalities using the constraints given for mathematical models. So here you need to know what is the inequalities. Okay. And then the last step, we need to compute the optimal value of an objective function using the vertices corner points from part A of a feasible region. So you should know that this part we already learned in lecture 1 and 2. Okay. So please refer to your lecture 1 and 2 so that you can understand it very well. And then student, please remember it is compulsory for you to use craft paper in order to solve the problems. Okay. Because the problems is about application. So you need to use craft paper starting from now. It is compulsory. So let's see the first one. Here we have example 1. A factory produces two types of radio, hi-fi and mini, using machine P and Q. In a month, it produces X unit of hi-fi model and Y unit of mini model. Machine P needs 40 minutes and 30 minutes to produce each unit of hi-fi model and mini model respectively. Machine Q needs 20 minutes and 35 minutes respectively for the same kind of work. Production in a month of the company is limited by the following conditions. So here we need to obey the condition. The first one, the amount of time used by machine P does not exceed 4,800 minutes. It means that less than or equal 4,800. And then the second condition, the amount of time used by machine Q does not exceed 2,800. Less than or equals to 2,800. And then number 3, the profit of each unit of the model hi-fi and mini is 80 ringgit and 40 ringgit respectively. And then we need to answer all the question A, B, C and D. So student, to be easy and systematic, what you need to do is you need to put all the information in the table. So you need to draw table. And first thing first, what we need to do? We need to identify your variable. Please remember the step. First step, we need to identify the variable. What are the variable? So now let X be the unit of hi-fi and let Y be the unit of mini. Okay, and then draw your table. So this is your table. So you need to put all the values inside the table. What are the values that we have? Okay, see here we have 40, 30, 20, 35, 4,800, 2,800, 80 ringgit, 40 ringgit. What else? Okay, so ensure that all the values are inside the table. So your table will be, for the column, let's write as this one is machine, and then here is hi-fi, where hi-fi is X unit. This one is mini, where mini is Y unit. Okay, and then we have machine P here, machine Q, and then we have profit. Don't forget we have time constraint. Okay, so we need to put all the values. Machine P needs 40 minutes and 30 minutes. That means machine P here is 40, and then this is 30. Machine Q needs 20 and 35. So here 20 and here is 35. And then we have the values 4,800. So where should we put 4,800, student? Please think. Okay, so the value will be here, 4,800. Okay, and then machine Q does not exceed 2,800. And then the profit for hi-fi 80, for mini 40. Okay, so this is your table to be easy and systematic, and also avoid any careless mistake. Just put all the values inside your table. Next we have A. Write down the system of inequalities of the problem. So here usually students seem confused on how to add the variables X and Y. The idea is so simple. Since your X and Y is in the column, so you can see here your X is in the second column and your Y is in the third column. So what you should do, you should add them across the column like this. Okay, add them across the column. So you will get 40x plus 30y less than or equals to 4,800, and then 20x plus 35y less than or equals to 2,800. Okay, please listen and watch this carefully. Okay, students tend to do the mistake like this. What did they do? This shows that the student add across the row. Okay, the student takes this 40 and then add with this 20. 40x plus 20y. This is wrong. Okay, why this is wrong? Because your x and y is in the column. Why you should add across the row? This is across the row, dear. There is no variable across the row. Okay, so this is totally wrong. We should add across the column since our variable is in the column. So here it is important for you to understand how it works so that you will have a correct system of linear inequalities. If you get the wrong one, then everything will go wrong. Okay, so please remember and be careful. And then student, the last inequalities, which is the compulsory for you to write, is xy greater than or equals to 0. Okay, so this inequalities is compulsory for you to write. If not, you will lose mark, because this question is about application. Okay, we are talking about x unit and y unit. So it is impossible for us to produce anything below 0. Next, B, we have state the constraints and the objective function in order to get the maximum profit. So the constraint that we have is time constraints. Okay, And the inequalities is 40x plus 30y less than or equals to 4,800 and 20x plus 35y less than or equals to 2,800. So this is the constraints. And then the objective function. What is the objective function? So here you can see the objective function is to get the maximum profit. Okay, so what are the values referring to profit? The values referring to profit is 80 and 40, right? So the objective function is pi xy equals to 80x plus 40y. Okay, so this is the objective function. Pi xy equals to 80x plus 40y. So we already done the part A and part B. For the next part, we need to sketch the feasible region that satisfies the system inequalities in part A. So for the part C, you need to remember lecture 1 and lecture 2. Okay? Now let's answer for C. Sketch the feasible region that satisfies the system of inequalities in part A. So please refer to your book, page 8 of 10. Okay? So now let's sketch the feasible region. First thing first, what we need to do. Okay, let's do it for first inequalities here. We have 40x plus 30y less than or equals to 4,800. Okay. The steps are, we need to ensure that your y is on left hand side and it is positive. So here we don't have to rewrite your inequalities. And then your line will be solid line. Okay. And then the region that you will get for the first inequality is lower region. Okay. Because of the notation less than or equal, I will write it as below. Okay, B for below. So the next step, we need to write 40x plus 30y equals to 4,800. Then let's find 2 points. Let x equals to 0. 30y equals to 4,800. Then your y will be equal to 160. So the first point is 0, 160. Okay, and then let y equals to 0. Okay, so you will have x will be equals to 120. So the second point will be 120, 0. Okay, so this is for the first inequalities. Then the second inequalities, 20x plus 35y less than or equals to 2,800. Then this is solid line and the region will be below part. Okay. Please remember all the steps that we had learned in lecture 1 and lecture 2. Okay. And then let x equals to 0. Then your y will be 80. So the first point is 0, 80. Then the second point, okay. And then the last inequalities where we have x, y greater than or equals to 0. Ensure that your graph is in the first quadrant only. Okay. So now let's draw your linear graph. Okay, prepare your graph paper first. Okay, it is compulsory for you to use graph paper by now. Okay, and then let's decide what are the scale that we need to use for x and y axis. Okay, the scale that we need to use is, I will erase this part so that you can see. Okay. For x-axis, we will have 5 units equals to 20. For y-axis, 5 units equals to 20 as well. So, draw your axis. So, this is your x and this is your y. And then, your scale. So, here we will have 20, 40, 60, 80, 100, 120, 140 here. Okay. And the same for the y-axis. 20, 40, 60, 80, 100, 120, 140, 160. Okay. And then let's start with the first inequalities, where the first point is 0 and 160. So the point is here. Okay, mark your point with X. And then the second point is 120, 0. So the point is here. Okay, and then draw your linear graph. Your linear graph must be solid line. So this is a solid line. Okay, and remember student, please ensure that you draw the linear graph just in the first quadrant only. You cannot draw it pass through the x-intercept or y-intercept, because here we are talking about real life situation where your x and y should be greater than or equals to 0. So please be careful. Just draw your linear graph in first quadrant only. Okay, so this is the first linear graph, and then the shaded region will be below. So here. Okay. Right. Next, for the second inequalities, we have the point 0, 80. So mark your point 0, 80, and the second point is 140, 0. So mark your point and then draw your linear graph. Okay, don't forget to label your graph. Okay, student. So I will write it here. 20x plus 35y equals to 2800. And then for the first inequalities, we have 40x plus 30y less equals to 4800. Okay. The region for the second inequalities is below. So here. Okay. And then we need to determine the region where the shaded part intersect each other. So you can see here, the region is here. So this is where the shaded part intersect each other. Please remember, you should shade the region in the first quadrant only. Okay, next step, what we need to do? We need to identify the corner point. So where is your corner point, student? The first point will be, okay, A here, B, C and D. Okay, so we have 4 corner points, but for the first corner point here, A, which is 0, 0, we can ignore it, because when x equals to 0, y equals to 0, then the profit will be 0. So it is useless to compute for this point. So now let's find 4 points. Just denote A, just 0, 0. And then for point B, we can read it from your graph, where the point B is 0, 80. Okay. And then for point C, what we need to do for point C? Point C, we need to do the simultaneous equation. Please remember, you cannot read the point from your graph. You need to do the simultaneous equation. So it is between 40x plus 30y equals to 4,800, and the second inequality is 20x plus 35y equals to 2,800. Okay, and then you should do by yourself, and you will get the point is 105.20. Okay, and the last corner point is D, 1200. Alright, so draw your corner point table, and then your objective function is pi xy is 80x plus 40y. Okay, and then put the respected corner point inside the objective function and compute the value. Okay, and here you can see and compare. The maximum value would be at point 120, 0, because this is the maximum. We need to find the maximum profit. Please remember, our objective is to find the maximum profit. So the maximum value would be 9,600. Okay, so student, the important notes that you need to know is, first one, you need to ensure your linear graph in the first quadrant only, and then you should label your graph, your x-intercept, your y-intercept, and then you should label the shaded region as R. Make sure that your linear graph just in the first quadrant only, cannot pass through the y-intercept or x-intercept. So please remember the important note. If not, you will lose mark. Okay, and then what we need to do? Okay, we need to write the conclusion. It is compulsory for you to write a conclusion for application. The conclusion would be to maximize the profit, the factory should produce 120 units of hi-fi radio and 0 units of mini radio. Therefore, maximum profit is RM. Don't forget RM, 9,600. Okay, so this is how to answer this question.